Uncanny Japan is author me, Teresa Matsura, exploring all that is weird from Japan. Strange superstitions and old wives' tales, cultural oddities, and interesting language quirks. These are little treasures I dig up while doing research for my writing, and I want to share them with you here on Uncanny Japan. I hope you like the show. Hey everyone. I did it. I got 2 episodes of Uncanny Japan out in February. The weather even cooperated and became all nice and rainy and dreary. And that's not sarcasm, I really mean it. I love this weather. So today's topic is a continuation on the last one, episode 46. Remember we were talking about kanashibari, or sleep paralysis? Well, there is something that is associated with kanashibari. At least I think so, because of this thing that happened to me ages ago. I was newly married and living in this old Japanese house we were renting. I had no friends. I had friends, but they were all living in the States, or my friends from university in Japan had all graduated and gone back to their respective countries. So I had just moved into this house in this small town in this very old-fashioned neighborhood, and I didn't know anyone my own age. If I've said it once, I've said it 100 times. This was a few years before the internet began being used in homes, so yeah, I was feeling pretty isolated. I wasn't sad, though. I spent my days hanging out with my mother-in-law, or the elderly women who lived nearby. I also spent a lot of time translating and cooking recipes from this giant cookbook I bought at a local bookstore. When I got tired of that, I watched a bunch of Gegege no Kitaro, Hisatsu Shigotonin, or Hokuto no Ken. Anyway, one night, for no reason I can think of, I got kanashibari, which is fine, I was kind of used to it. I had learned that if I tried to call out or thrash about, nothing happened and it just made it scarier. If, though, I could concentrate on moving a little finger or a toe, then that tiny movement usually snapped me out of it. Well, that wasn't working this time. Another odd thing was that I couldn't see. It was like a blanket had been thrown over my face. But it felt like there was someone in the room. Not my sleeping husband, but someone awake. And then, just as soon as I had that thought, someone or something began to climb on me. It was really painful. It felt like something small and really heavy was purposefully digging its sharp elbows and knees into my stomach and chest and moving around. The next day, I mentioned this episode to my mother-in-law. She clapped her hands in delight and told me how wonderful that was to hear. I had to reiterate how much it had hurt and how scared I'd been. But she said no, it wasn't scary. What had climbed on me last night was a Zashiki Warashi, a little ghosty thing that looks like a child and visits people at night, sometimes while they sleep. It just wanted to play, she said. It was bringing me good luck. The vibe I got wasn't good luck. It was more like that painting, The Nightmare, by Henry Fuseli. You know, the one where the woman is sleeping with her arms thrown back over her head, while crouched on her chest and looking straight at you is this small demon-like figure? Yeah, that's more what it felt like. Anyway, she begged to differ, and that's the first time I ever heard about Zashiki Warashi. Sometimes in English they're called the guest room child. I've also since learned they go by Zashiki Warabe, Zashiki Boko, and Zashiki Kozo as well. There are reports of them all across Japan, with the Tohoku or northeastern area being most famous for them. You'll find lots of stories about Zashiki Warashi visitations in Iwate, Aomori, Akita, and Miyagi prefectures, especially Iwate. First off, what does a Zashiki Warashi look like? Just in case you run across one, or one runs across you. In general, they look like children, usually thought to be about 5 or 6 years old, although there are reports of both younger and older ones. They can be male or female, or no gender at all, alone or in pairs or groups. It's also said that they have a red face and sport a bob haircut with straight bangs. This, in Japanese, is sometimes called an okappa cut. They'll be wearing these old-fashioned clothes, like a chanchanko, a kind of Japanese jacket, or a kimono, either formal or informal. Their clothes are usually dark-colored or perhaps red. Sometimes even an old-fashioned design or striped. You can find images of them looking super cute or super scary. You might have heard of them from anime or manga. Zashiki Warashi have made appearances in titles from Yokai Watch and Onmyoji to Mononoke and Gegege no Kitaro. Although I read through some of the episodes involving them, and even though these were written by Japanese authors, some seem to have taken a few liberties with the original legends. So I'm going to stick to the original stories here. Zashiki Warashi are associated with a place, not a person. And not every place has one. But if you do live in a house and one or two or more decide to settle there, it's considered very good luck for you. It's thought that with them comes prosperity, fortune, and happiness. But you have to be careful because they won't necessarily stay. If you don't give them the respect they deserve, they'll leave. Or if you pay too much attention to them, they'll leave. And if a Zashiki Warashi leaves your home, you'll find your luck and wealth will both suddenly decline. So what else do they do? They're pranksters mostly. Remember we talked about the Makura Gaishi last time? Well, I've read that sometimes the Zashiki Warashi will also do the pillow switching trick, sneaking it from under your head while you're asleep and placing it at your feet. They've been known to leave tiny footprints in scattered ash or handprints on windows and doors. You might hear them giggle and run across the tatami mat floor, or you might hear music or see white orbs floating about the room. All these things are the work of a Zashiki Warashi. Now, not all Zashiki Warashi are created equal. There are some different kinds. One is called a Cho Pirako. These beautiful glowing apparitions are also luck and wealth bringers. They're thought to be the spirits of deceased children of more well-off families. For example, imagine a wealthy family with only one child. If that child passes away at a young age, an entire room could be dedicated to the deceased boy or girl. A room filled with presents and toys and kept pristine. A very perfect environment for the Cho Pirako to appear. They are a little high maintenance though, so you must give them more attention than a regular Zashiki Warashi. Another kind is called a hosote, or skinny arms, or the hosote nagate, skinny arms, long arms. When sleeping during the night, these long red slender child's arms come out to wake you. I found two totally different versions of the myth behind these yokai. One, that they use the long arms to warn you against a disaster, say a flood or a tsunami. On another site, however, one in Japanese, and it looked to be an older text, the story about the hosote, skinny arms, was that they bring bad luck. It was a story about how up north, a man was staying in an inn when a pair of long, skinny arms came out from the back of the room beckoning him. Nothing happened at the time, but shortly after he lost his wife in a tsunami. In the same town, the arms appeared again in another house. They were attached to a child of about 3 or 4 years old. They reached out like vines across the room, and later, that man's house was washed away in a flood. There are also types of Zashiki Warashi that inhabit the dirt floor in an old home. They are called Notabariko, Usutsuriko, or Kometsuki Warashi. These little guys aren't necessarily the happy type. Let's get dark for a moment. As in most cultures way back in the day, sometimes some people did this thing called infanticide. One name for it in Japanese was called usugoro. Usu is a mortar, and goro means to kill. Now, I've usually heard this called mabiki. Mabiki is what you do when you plant seeds and they all sprout. But since they're all crowded together, you need to pull a bunch out to let the strong ones thrive. Anyway, usu goro. And usu, a mortar, is big and made of wood or stone. The story goes that it was used to crush perhaps sickly newborns or children that were unwanted. The story also goes that sometimes they were buried under the dirt floor in the house. These restless spirits would walk around on rainy days and bother people. For example, the notabariko would claw its way out from the dirt floor and crawl around, while the usutsuriko would make the sound of a mortar grinding something. Both very creepy. Now for another more happy Zashiki Warashi story. There is an inn called Ryokufuso in Iwate Prefecture that is quite famous for having one or more Zashiki Warashi living there. I remember watching TV shows about people who had spent the night there and the experiences they had, hearing sounds, seeing things, usually white floating orbs, or feeling things. I also remember thinking, wouldn't it be cool to make a reservation and spend the night there, just to see what happens? But at the time, the waiting list was 2 years long, and also, the area where the Zashiki Warashi was supposed to appear was a little spooky. There were hundreds of dolls, toys, especially stuffed animals, piled up along the walls and in the tokonoma alcove. Some of them were quite old and really scary looking. It's said that most of the strange occurrences that happen in the inn often happened in a room called the Injunoma. One legend is that back in the 1300s, during the Namboku era, a boy who lived there fell sick. On his deathbed, he promised to protect his household forever. The Zashiki Warashi is thought to be his spirit, still protecting, although sometimes they're referred to in the plural, so maybe he has since invited some friends. Anyway, it was always in the back of my head, Ryokufuso, this place I wanted to visit someday. Then suddenly, on the night of October 4th, 2009, the entire place burned down, which to me was kind of creepy. I mean, weren't these little ghosties supposed to be protecting the place? But listening to interviews with the 30 or so people who were staying at the inn that night, they said that everyone escaped unharmed, and not only that, but the nearby shrine that was dedicated to the Zashiki Warashi was completely unharmed. They believe it was the Zashiki Warashi that helped protect the people, then escaped themselves to the shrine, living there while the inn was being rebuilt. Once Ryokufuso reopened, the Zashiki Warashi returned. The place is quite gorgeous now and is still having otherworldly activity going on. So if you're interested in staying somewhere up north, that might be an idea. So there you have it. Next time you're hanging out at home late at night all by yourself and you hear a child giggling in the next room, perhaps running up behind you, or maybe you're deep asleep and unable to move, and some curious creature crawls on top of you and pushes and pulls, begging you to play. Don't be afraid. It's just a Zashiki Warashi, there to increase your fortune and luck. Then again, it could be a Hosote Nagate trying to warn you about something, or something even more insidious. I say trust your gut on this one. Thank you everyone for listening, supporting me on Patreon, and leaving such lovely reviews. I wanted to mention that this month's Patreon-only bedtime story is called Gonbei the Duck Hunter. Come listen and find out why Gonbei is a real jerk. Also, I'll be putting up a karaage fried chicken recipe soon, so look forward to that if you're on my Patreon page. Have a wonderful day, stay safe, and I will talk to you again real soon. Bye-bye. Psst. Hey, do you like scary stories? Or maybe you don't do full-on horror, but enjoy a nice dark tale, something creepy involving Japanese folklore and superstition? Well, if that's the case, you can sneak on over to Amazon or wherever you like to buy books and look for my 2 short story collections, A Robe of Feathers, and The Carp-Faced Boy. All you need to do is search for Teresa Matsura. Let me spell that for you. TheresaMatsura. Another place you can find me doing things is on Patreon. There, once a month, for my $5 and up patrons, I translate, retell, and record obscure Japanese folk tales. Some are dark, some are humorous, some are just weird. And lastly, another super sweet thing you can do is to write a review on iTunes. By doing this, you help like-minded people find Uncanny Japan. It's a little thing, but it means a lot, and it's a great big help. Thank you. I'm Teresa Matsura, and I'll talk to you soon.